intro, Garrett. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here. As Garrett mentioned, I'm Jordan. And for the last 9 years, I founded, scaled, and exited an agency which helped businesses attract and convert local clients using paid and organic search, whether it be single location law firms, all the way up to national home service franchises. And as an agency owner that sat in the trenches of client work, one question that constantly came up was, how do I know what you're doing is actually working? And that was a completely understandable question because at the end of the day, as a marketer, we're not hired to improve AI visibility, clicks to a site, phone calls, leads, or what have you. We're hired to grow revenue. And if we're not doing that, then we're not really doing our job. However, all the traditional tools that we have, whether it be GA, GSC, Google Ads, or really anything else, it shows us the quantitative side of things, not really the qualitative. And it doesn't give us a full picture of what happens post website conversion, which is what our clients really care about. And that's where call transcripts come into play. They're the only continuous scalable source of direct, unfiltered insights into your client's best and worst customers. The people calling in, they're ready to buy. They're asking the questions that are important to them. They're telling you why they will or won't move forward and what they do or don't like. No matter how much keyword, market, persona research that you do, it's all an assumption. Transcripts, on the other hand, they're cold hard facts directly from the source of truth. So whether you're working with local clients that have leads calling them, enterprise SaaS brands that do disco or demo calls, you need to be mining those transcripts. So how do we actually do this? I know some of you are thinking, my gosh, my clients have thousands of calls over the past few years across dozens of channels and pages. Well, thanks to LLMs, it makes life a heck of a lot easier. So from a 1,000-foot view, you want to create a pipeline that goes from raw phone calls to actionable insights. So it looks something like the following. First, you need to export all your calls from your call tracking provider. It could be CallRail, What Converts, Gong, Fathom, really anything else. You can do this by either getting super fancy and nerdy by using webhooks in an API, or you could do a simple CSV export. Next, you want to transcribe them. Depending on what software you're using, those transcripts may already be available. If that's the case, it's as simple as an export. If not, you can use something like OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, or 11 Labs to handle it. Next, you want to start prompting against each of those individual transcripts that you've exported. Use your favorite LLM to extract the key topics and insights from it. And then you want to save those results into some sort of database. Could be as simple as a Google Sheet, a SQL database like Postgres or BigQuery, or if you want to crank it up a notch, you can even create embeddings out of them, saving them into a vector database like Pinecone or Vertex. And then last but not least, you can start aggregating, filtering, slicing, and dicing the responses for really actionable insights. Now, as much as I enjoy talking about the technical side of things, that's not what clients are really paying for and, quite frankly, even care about. So for the rest of this talk, let's actually dive into the meat and potatoes of things, which are prompting against the transcripts and finding actionable insights out of them. So let's actually start off by building a prompt together. The first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, what makes a good prompt? And as SEOs, we should actually already know the answer. It depends. And it really depends on what you want to learn. So just like vibe coding a tool, I like to start with the end goal in mind and then kind of work backwards from there. What are we trying to solve for at the end of the day? Is there a certain channel, campaign, page, or strategy that's performing poorly? Or is something working but not actually translating into revenue? So I like to start with the basics by first stealing a page out of the telemarketing industry, and we can use some basic call disposition questions, which include, what was the outcome of the call? Was it booked? Is there a follow-up? Did they drop off? Are they even qualified? By creating customized outcomes for each of our clients, we can start categorizing the calls into buckets for better analysis. Next, what was the persona that the lead fit into? Was it B2B or B2C for SaaS? Or for home services, was it an owner versus a renter? And then where is the lead located? Is it in or outside of a specific territory or service area? And then what was the solution or products that were discussed during the call itself? And then lastly, what questions were asked? This gives you a nice catch-all to help identify insights that you may not necessarily be thinking about asking for right off the bat. So as a reminder, you want to start using these base questions as a starter and really build on them. So think about your prompt kind of like a house. At the base and foundation, you have these initial starter questions that you might want insight on. Then as you start stacking on more specific questions about topics as you go on. So these additional topics could be industry related, channel, persona, or even client specific questions. You really want to take your time here to flesh out and be super crystal clear about what you're trying to learn so that you can craft your prompt to help find those insights. The saying of garbage in, garbage out really does apply here. So now that you have your entire prompt, you want to start running it against each of those calls that you've exported. Again, the best way to do this is have a small sample size of calls, run it through Claude Code to whip up a quick script that loops through each of them, saving it to your Google Sheet or preferred database. So once you have everything saved, you now need to start mining these insights and kind of like connecting those dots for something that's genuinely actionable. So let's actually look at a couple of examples of what this could look like. So for a B2B SaaS, we can extract insights from disco or demo calls that have caused aha moments and use that to guide strategy. So for example, we can look at leads from a specific industry page that we want to mine calls to and learn which questions, features, integrations, and competitors are consistently discussed, and then use that to adjust our content strategy, identify partnership opportunities, and even run CRO experiments to better target that specific persona and really speak to their pain points that they're going through. Another example of this could be a multi-location home services company, right? We could use the calls from their GBP profile to identify seasonal or regional trends, common questions, and then use that to adjust the primary or secondary categories, determine which content to use for their profile posts, and even identify new service pages to develop. So ultimately, as a marketer, you want to be providing actual business and strategic value, not just to the channels that you're working on, but to the client's business as a whole. So a perfect example of this is with a plumber that I used to work with. So in the first few months, I was able to increase first-time callers pretty significantly, but started to hear from the client that booked jobs weren't increasing at the same rate. Clearly, something was not lining up between what we were seeing and what the client was seeing. So after troubleshooting across a few of your typical areas like checking GA, conversion events, attribution, we decided to start analyzing their inbound calls. We looked across multiple channels, pages, service areas, and as we were digging into the aggregated data, we noticed that there was a good chunk of calls every day that had data missing from what we were trying to gather with the prompt, which was very peculiar. And as we dug into these calls, we found out that the plumber was actually answering the phone while he was on the job, which meant he was distracted. He didn't follow his typical script. People felt slighted and didn't feel like they were getting the attention that they deserved. So once we found this out, we worked with him on showing him not just the amount of calls, but the types of jobs that he was missing out on, and use that as backwards math to figure out, did it actually make sense to get an answering service? And in this case, it did. So that resulted in him being able to close all these calls that he was really missing out on and closing them into actual jobs. So this is a perfect example of not just how you can use transcripts to improve performance on your channels that you're touching, but actually thinking bigger and being a strategic partner for your clients. So hopefully now you can understand why transcripts are so important and how to use them for actionable insights. So just to recap, if you want to start doing this yourself, tell my agency friends, speak to a lawyer and get written permission from a client, because there could be PII and HIPAA data in there, which is a big no-no. Next, start small and gather a sample set of calls that you want to analyze as a proof of concept, transcribe and prompt against them, and then apply those insights that you've gathered into an actionable plan to drive revenue. So to wrap things up, Garrett, Mike, thanks a ton for having me on and this opportunity to pitch. And hopefully I'll be able to dive a heck of a lot deeper into this with all of you in New York. Thanks.